What's up, everybody? This is Live at 9:09. This is Arthur Murray, USA. My name is Chris Lynham. And yes, I took my kids to the Western Conference Finals yesterday. And yes, it was a classic game. And yes, it was very scary. And yes, there were some professional basketball players, the best in the world, that weren't playing so great for a little bit of time. And the learning lesson is that sometimes you don't need to do an overall assessment of your craft just because you're not getting great results. If you could permanently ditch your hobby, or if you did permanently ditch your hobby, let's say it's ballroom dancing, let's just say it. If you permanently ditched it because you were having a bad day in, say, like the foxtrot, and then you permanently cut it from your program or just cut the hobby altogether, then you wouldn't be here today. Same thing. So there's this expression is that you continue to feed the hot hand. So in basketball, like let's say Steph Curry, he had a great game yesterday, but let's just say that Steph Curry's hitting a lot of shots, and so the players will continue to pass to the guy that's making the most shots. That's just smart. It's just smart basketball. Well, imagine that there's probably some other players, like for example, Klay Thompson didn't have a very great game. But what did he do? So he kept shooting, wasn't really getting the results that he wanted. So what he did is he made contributions in his rebounding and in his defense. So let's flip that over. And instead of thinking of keep feeding the hot hand, what I want you to imagine is that you're going to keep feeding the hot skill. So like let's say, for example, the skill in your foxtrot just isn't there. It's really easy to mope around about your foxtrot. But on the flip side, what you can do is you can double down on your tango. If this was basketball, you're going to emphasize more defense and rebounding. You're going to do whatever you can. If this is the business of teaching people how to dance, if you're a ballroom dance instructor, it's really easy to kind of get bummed out. Maybe if you had a great student and then they decided to go on vacation and they didn't come back. You can get really bummed out about that, and then that can affect your performance in other ways. And so that's where now you've got to make contributions to the rest of your team, even if maybe you're not making contributions by the lessons that you're teaching. I think that sometimes what we can do is we can self-sabotage more than we can like self-assess and pivot to something else that could be a strength that we could rely on. We talked about this last week, is that it's like a fuel tank, and if you had like 3 fuel tanks and one of them was empty, you wouldn't pull your car over and hold out your thumb and start hitchhiking. So but if you have 2 other tanks, you're just going to switch to the other tank. A funny story about that is my grandmother had this Jaguar, and it was the nicest car I'd ever been in my entire life. And I'll never forget, my mom was driving it, and the car had 2 gas tanks, and I'd never heard of that. And it's not very common these days anyway. But I remember the fuel gauge was on empty, and my mom is panicking, thinking that she's about to run out of gas, and then she remembered that it had a second tank, and she just hit this little switch, and it flipped over to the other tank, and it was awesome. So imagine if you could do that. Imagine if you could have a button that even on a Monday, when maybe your motivation might be lacking the most, even on a Monday, if maybe you're dreading something about your day, or maybe you're on a bad streak in terms of one particular area of your profession, like what if you could hit a button and then immediately you could fill in the other areas where you could still make a contribution that might be able to hold you over until that main skill, like your favorite thing, kind of comes back. What's funny is that you do this all the time with TV. I mean, if you were like me, when you'd watch Saturday morning cartoons or something like that, you'd have a couple of your favorites, and then you'd have ones that were like the filler shows that would kind of tide you over from one of your favorites to another one, even if you didn't like it. But the idea is the same thing in business, is that you've got to find what's the activity that you can do even when your main thing is struggling. What's something that you can do that can still make a contribution, so that way you can stay positive and you can still feel productive, rather than just calling the whole thing quits and then wiping the Monopoly board of your career completely clean. So happy Monday to all of you. Basketball players do this all the time. Football players do this all the time, is they intentionally make contributions when they're lacking in one area of their game. They'll make contributions in other areas of their game. And why can't we do the same thing in our hobbies, and why can't we do the same thing in business? So this has been Live at 909. This is Arthur Murray USA, and my name is Chris Lynham, and thank you for tuning in. And you can check out more of my stuff on arthurmurraylive.com/blog, or you can look up Chris Lynham on Quora, where you can check out Arthur Murray USA on Twitter. So thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great Monday. And if you are dreading one thing because it's not been working for you, then pivot to something else that's productive to tide you over until you can kind of get that one back on track. All right, have a great Monday and rest of the week. See you tomorrow. Same parking lot, same time.